Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Good morning, I suppose. Assalamu alaikum. Today, I'm so thankful to be here today in front of you all, in this room, in this moment, as a community. Today, I want to talk a little bit about bridges. I come from the Bronx. My family comes from a community that has been legislated into second-class citizenship in the United States, that our ethnicity and our people have been legislatively treated differently. And we are Puerto Rican. And I think that today it was important for me to talk about bridges because in this era of divisiveness, in this era where we speak about divisiveness often, we name that this is a tool used by the administration, but oftentimes we fail to see it in our everyday lives. And so oftentimes what it looks like is a culture in our community, a culture in our society where we actively seek out difference, where we actively say, this person is different from me, this person said this thing that is different from me, instead of actively seeking out bridges. And what we need to do now more than ever, the way that we build power now more than ever, is by building these bridges, by seeing ourselves in the least likely instead of the most likely. And so it is so important that we create those bridges. It is so important that we create that solidarity, because I believe that what we did in New York, when people said it was impossible, when people said there is no way that you can elect this woman who had no previous political position, who had radical ideas, as Sister Linda spoke to, the radical idea that we should have equal rights, the radical idea that all people should be treated the same under the law. We did it through bottom-up organizing. And we say that often. We say the word bottom-up, which means knocking on our neighbor's door, knocking on our friend's door, knocking on our family's door, one by one, building community to lift others up. But I also want to talk a little bit about bottom-up in another sense. Bottom-up in the pursuit of justice. Bottom-up in the advancement of our values. Because as we said, it is not enough to want peace. It is not enough to want prosperity. It is not enough to want justice. We have to fight and build for those things. That is what we have to do. And so when we talk about bottom-up, oftentimes when you look at the history of the United States, some of the greatest movements for social justice came from a spiritual seat. You look at the civil rights movement, which was built in the pews of the Southern Baptist Leadership Council. You look just as recently as a year or two ago at Standing Rock, where you had Native peoples building on the spiritual fortification so that they could have that strength to advance and advocate for those values. Because I think we all know here that truth and justice is universal. And we have a deep sense in our appeal to our own humanity. We know there is a deep internal knowledge that is given to us, what is right and what is wrong. And we build and we strengthen that. So when we talk about bottom up, we also talk about building on the individual. We fortify ourselves. We start from the bottom with our sense of right and wrong, with our commitment to the dignity of families, with our commitment and action and committing to the action of social, economic, and racial justice in the United States of America. We start there as an individual. And then we go to whom we are personally responsible, our family, chosen or given. And we organize around our family. We organize around those values. We organize around building those bridges. And then we build into the community. But every single one of those steps, we build into our community, then we build into our cities and states, and then we build, hopefully, to a better future as a nation. But every single one of those steps from bottom up requires us to dismiss difference and to acknowledge the bridge. Every single one of those steps. When we start with ourselves, and then when we reach out to our friends and family, what do we do with our loved ones? We say, okay, He may have a little issue here. He may be a little stubborn. She may, have this issue. But I will ignore that anyway, because I will choose to see what I love in that person. That is what we do with our family and friends. And then as a community, same thing, where it's not to ignore the issues that we have, but is to acknowledge that we will work with each other on them, that we will educate each other on them in this greater pursuit. That is what we must do in terms of building allyship. The acknowledgement that our flaws are not permanent, but that we can educate and love each other out of them is what we must do to build our bridge. That is how we accomplished what we accomplished in the Bronx and Queens. It was the most diverse district, one of the most diverse districts in the United States of America. 70% people of color, about half Latino, but the other half, the predominant communities, were Muslim. And one of the first organizations to endorse our campaign was a small grassroots organization, Muslims for Progress, out in New York City. When everybody else was too scared, when everybody else looked at my campaign and said it's too dangerous to stand up against a multi-generational political machine, it's too dangerous to stand up to big money, it's too dangerous to stand up to the lobbyist groups, they saw the bridge. They saw the bridge. And they built the power. And they built the power. And together we built that power. And we built that up. And that is what we are asking to do. And that is what we must do in the entire country. And we are capable of it now. Because what I see now on this side, on June 25th, nobody knew who I was. On June 27th, I don't even know what happened. Everybody knew. But we also know there's no such thing as an overnight success. We have to be building this power constantly, having this conversation constantly. And what we saw, and what I see now, especially more on this side, before June 26th, on June 25th, we were operating on faith. Because we knew that as long as what we were doing was the right thing to do, the righteous thing to do, that it was the worthy thing to do. That is what we knew up until that day. But now, after this win, now that it seems like it's kind of gone into this rocket ship in a way, and we're operating in after the faith, after things, our hypothesis was proven, I see now, I've been to Kansas, I've been to the rest of the Bronx and Queens, I've been to other parts of New York, to St. Louis. Yesterday, we went from Grand Rapids with Brother Abdul El-Sayed. We went from Grand Rapids to Flint, back to Detroit. I see across the country that we have way more power than we realize. Much more, much more. And the only thing that's preventing us from grasping that power is our belief that we have it. We have it. The weapons that are used are primarily used for us to disarm ourselves. Cynicism is a weapon. I can't do it is a weapon. It's too hard is a weapon. It's impossible is a weapon. They have so much money is a weapon. They are weapons so that we don't even try, because the effort is what matters. I recently found out it's very common in New York. It's almost funny. It's almost common in New York. I realized that a lot of candidates fundraise millions of dollars, especially incumbents. They fundraise millions of dollars, not necessarily to use it, but because having millions of dollars is scary enough to just prevent anyone from trying. To prevent anyone from trying. That tells you everything about the dynamics of power. And as people of color, as marginalized peoples, we don't usually have access to those things. It's usually a little bit more difficult. But when we organize, when we build these bridges, when we see ourselves in one another, when we connect our struggles, when we realize that the fight for criminal justice reform is the fight against the Muslim ban, is the fight against child separation, is the fight for economic, social, and racial justice, is the fight for single-payer healthcare, is the fight for tuition-free public college, when we realize that all of these things are connected and we find our bridge into that fight, we will win. We will win. So I just want to reiterate my thanks for being here. I want to reiterate my gratitude for having this relationship of learning and growth. And of course, I'm so excited to introduce to you all Dr. Abdul El-Sayed. Because he, in his success, is our success. In his success here in Michigan is our success in the Bronx. I know a lot of children in my backyard who need to see him be governor of Michigan. Need to see it. And so I just want to thank you all so much, and I'm so excited to be linking arms and joining that fight because I see my bridge into Dr. El-Sayed's success. I see my bridge. And I see that his success is my success. And I see that we can't get healthcare until he gets it too. And that he fights for it as well. So thank you all so much. And